A gentleman from Florida, Dr. Dunn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's certainly exciting to be with such an august panel and talking about a space economy that's genuinely prosperous. That's just so excited to be in the space. Let's start with a lightning round of questions real quick, if I can. What is the number one thing that you think is the most important to the United States as a whole? Number one thing, just sort of a lightning round. We'll go right down the panel. Start with Mr. Crusan.
For me, it's continued human presence in space.
And expanding human presence in space with the U.S. in the lead of it.
It's making the moon accessible to the world and U.S. leadership in doing so.
I would agree that it's U.S. leadership in space, and I think the moon is the right focus for the near term.
To creating that space economy and developing the propellant resources on the moon.
Outstanding. So great answers. Again, just because we're the Congress of the U.S., Mr. Crusan, how do you think this affects national security?
So with space, you have resources. Where resources come different demands and different agendas. So I think from a national security point of view, the understanding of fundamental resources that exist in our nearest neighbor is incredibly important for us. It can help influence our human spaceflight architectures for sending humans further out into space. So first order of understanding what is there and what is its value to us as the U.S.
Great, great. Mr. Thornton, you mentioned, I guess it was Mr. Thornton, you said you had 115 customers? Right, okay, so what's the difference between your commercial customers and your government customers?
Sure. Just to clarify, we have 115 payloads in our pipeline, so it's our sales pipeline. But the difference that we have, about half of that is government, big and small around the world. Half of that is commercial. About half of the commercial part is new startups, and then the other half are established organizations. DHL, who's a partner and sponsor of ours, is an example of that commercial side. They see the innovative shipping to the moon as an extension of their global shipping service, and they're happy to be a part of our mission. On the small side, people are seeing the capability of flying to the surface of the moon as a means to potentially open their own businesses. We're seeing that with human ashes. We're seeing that there's groups that are interested in having races on the surface of the moon, create like a NASCAR experience from the moon. We've got groups that we just signed a payload that wants to create a first laser communication node from the surface of the moon. And that's a huge step because that is 2 orders of magnitude more bandwidth than we would have otherwise. So radio is about 200 kbps, so it's like a little bit more than a 56K modem. And then a gigabit per second, that's faster than most home internet connections. So you could have virtual reality experiences and HD video and pictures streaming back from the moon. So it really stands to have a fascinating and immersive experience for people back here on Earth.
Outstanding. Anything to add to that, Mr. Richards or Mr. Alexander?
Well, the excitement is genuine about the potential for the markets. We've got our heads down in the hard job right now of actually proving we can land on the moon. And getting the technology right, it's a very hard thing to do, and only 3 superpowers have ever done it. So while having great confidence that these amazing markets are going to open up, we're focused right now on getting it right and not having all our eggs in one basket. We have purchased several launches. Although we look across the spectrum of emergent and existing launchers agnostically, anybody going our way to Earth orbit, we're happy to buy a ride if it's at the right price. But we're after collapsing the cost of access to the moon and other destinations after Earth orbit.
I would just add that returning to the moon is a worthy endeavor. There are a lot of resources there, as we've talked about, to bring into the economic sphere of humanity. And to do that, we need to go back in a fairly big way. So we have designed a lander that can take a lot of those capabilities to the surface of the moon and eventually support human return to the moon. It's important to do from a U.S. leadership perspective. It's important to do from an economic perspective, but it requires a concerted effort.
We're going to run out of time here, so I have more questions than I could possibly ask in half an hour. But let me go back to Mr. Barra's question, because I thought that was a great one, and I didn't really hear an answer. I'm going to ask Dr. Sowers. Who owns the water, or who should own the water? You got around that when he asked you last time.
Yeah, I think the people that discover it and develop it should own it. I mean, that's a should. you know, I think we need to make sure that we can establish a framework of you know, regulatory or legal framework that makes that the case.
So pirates in space, I love it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.